Okay, fantastic. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. And for those who don't know me, my name is Brendan Griffiths. I'm an assistant professor of interaction design here at Parsons, and I'm helping to coordinate this presentation here. We are super lucky to have with us today Archie Lee Coates the fourth, who's a co-founder and co-director of PlayLab Incorporated, an extremely multidisciplinary Los Angeles-based creative studio founded with Jeff Franklin in 2009. With no particular focus, they explore themes using art, architecture, and graphic design to build worlds around ideas for themselves and others. It's my, again, very great pleasure to welcome Archie Lee Coates the fourth. Archie, thank you again for taking this on. It's great to see you. Welcome to Parsons. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited and nervous. Always nervous. Brendan, I'm just going to start by kind of saying how I know Brendan, which is pretty funny. Somebody that I've respected and been inspired by for an extremely long time. And we were just talking about how last time I stopped by Parsons was like 5 or 6 years ago or something. But he has a studio, Zootalors, and it was like when PlayLab was starting, we didn't have a lot of reference points, and Zootalors was one of them. And one day we got a cryptic email from either Brendan or Frank inviting us by their 6th Avenue studio, which was like fable because it was above Carlson Wilker's studio, which was like the reason we started PlayLab. And I remember them inviting us to some sort of party, and we felt like so excited and so cool. And we show up to this party, and we're the only people at this party. And there's like a couple beers, and it was their website launch. It was their website launch, and it was just us. And we were like, this is fucking fire. And I think that story is important because that's the guiding principle of this entire thing that Jeff and I and our team have built with PlayLab, is that it's about people and it's about these stories. And it's exciting because they come, kind of full circle. And full preface, I don't know how many people in this room have like potentially ever heard me speak, and sorry if you have, but I get personal and I get super emotional because it is that for me. I'm kind of weird and I have no other mode, but yeah, like jumping in, full disclosure, this is an email with Brendan dated 3 days ago, in which I had no idea what I was going to talk about. And I asked him, and he gave me this amazing email, and hate to put him on blast like this, but he had this incredible observation about tangents. And it's a word that I had never thought about me or my life or the practice that Jeff and I have created with PlayLab. And it was this borderline kind of epiphany for me. It like struck a chord, this idea of tangents. And that the definition of tangents, or going off on a tangent, literally means to start talking or doing something that is only slightly or indirectly related to the original thing you were doing, which is such an incredible concept, like AKA, going on, taking a different course, or like the road less traveled, or whatever analogy you want to put in there. And I just thought that was incredibly beautiful, because my entire life, until I had this email with Brendan, I didn't realize that my entire life has been, is, and will be always a tangent, which is why like me giving talks is like a hilarious thing. But the tangent thing is just that I've been interested in everything my entire life. Like growing up, it was like, it was a little difficult because I cared about so many things. This is a photo of me 20 years ago, about to play a show in one of the many bands I was in as like guitar player and singer. And I drank an ungodly amount of Diet Coke at this time. And you can really date me because I'm wearing like a Volcom hat and like a hardcore zip up hoodie, et cetera, in like a elementary school cafeteria where our bands played, But yeah, growing up, like I'm in high school, and like every day I feel like my head is going to explode, and like kind of not in a positive way, because it was always like I could see the things that I wanted to do or be a part of or be involved in. And it was this ultimate frustrating thing that I could not reach it all. And it's still that way to this day. And so it produced like this image, like I can viscerally feel it, but it produced an incredible amount of like crippling anxiety and worry for me growing up. And fortunately for me, like it drove me to something. But I'm playing in bands, I'm skateboarding, I'm breaking my ankle, I'm trying to surf, but I can't. My friends are good at it. So then I'm doing rock climbing, and then I'm doing this. And this entire time, my parents, who put me in the most privileged position and championed any interest that I had, they supported me. And at one point, like the most fucking weird tangent is that I wanted to do architecture. So they send me to this place in Miami, University of Miami. I'm in high school and I do this semester over the course of a summer. Then I go to Virginia Tech, and that school changed my life. Like it was like a home for my brain. And it was like, hey, Archie, it's cool. Like you can think about all these things and you actually have a place to do them. And I kind of did that for that first year, and I felt good, but at the same time, I was scared out of my mind. And then I met Jeff Franklin, my partner and best friend, and I found somebody that was like me in those ways. And I saw my future and my present, and it felt a little bit kind of calmer. Oh, this is like a fun text I got from my mom the other day that said, "Time to make art happen," right before this Louis show we were doing a couple of weeks ago. And that's like the full defense of how incredible my parents are. But yeah, I just show this napkin a lot, but I meet Jeff and we immediately are thinking about the future and how many things we want to do. And this is literally like a diagram of tangents. And in it at the top, you see like the growth of PlayLab kind of ends with a Parsons lecture on the very top left, if you notice that, which is pretty ironic for this conversation. But yeah, we meet, and PlayLab is born in 2003, like 20 years ago. We get an apartment together, we're talking about things, we're watching films, we're trying to do projects, we're doing all of this stuff. And we naively just wanted to kind of create a place where we could creatively do or try anything, regardless of training or knowing how, or if we should. And the point was like, if we led by interest and kindness and teamwork, that we could leapfrog from one thing to another based on things we cared about in relationships that were in front of us or next to us. And so what kind of evolved, this is 2003 and 2005 and 6, our apartments, where we lived together. And what kind of evolved was this very slow growing building place where it was safe to go on tangents, like quite literally. And I'm not going to give you that full story, because if you gave me the time I would, but like in the future, if you catch me, I'll give you a 24-hour monologue. But this is like 2009, 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And there was another studio in there somewhere. And then this is where we are today in Los Angeles, California. We've been here for me since end of 2019. And this journey is completely like tangential. We've always, the first studio we had when we moved to New York, we put this statement on an 8.5 by 11 and just tacked it to the wall, this thinking of like, there's no goal or point to this partnership or this studio. It's really like, we'll do a thing. And then when we get to the end of that thing, we'll see what we see then. And then we'll see if we want to go after that. And that's generally how simple it is. The longer it goes on, the harder it is to do that, but we're still doing it, which is incredible. And I think the easiest way to kind of explain that tangent is to quickly and rapidly, without boring you, give you like a quick hit of various tangents and projects over 15 years. And then I'll come back around the horn to like wrap it up. But it loosely goes in chronological order with some sort of shifts in there. And it may get emotional for me because like looking back at this work, it's sort of like you immediately get put back into that place where you feel like fearful and worried, but also triumphant because you did something. And then looking back 10 years later, you're like, man, that wasn't that great, whatever we did, which is not the point. The point is to just kind of keep moving and trying things. Very beginning, we were making posters. Like we did this, I think, for $50 for a series called Wordless Music Cities series in New York. Our studio partner at the time, Jonathan O'Brien, we made this Max Richter poster out of the toilet paper in the studio we paid $500 a month for. In that same time, we were so obsessed with music, obviously, like us being in bands and things, that we created a record label, self-funded the first 5 vinyl records, tried to get bands on tour and do music videos and make business cards and build an ecosystem around this idea. We failed miserably at it, but we got some beautiful artifacts out of it. Around that same time, we opened a pie shop in Southern Alabama. We didn't know anything about pie. Like, little known fact, I had never had a slice of pie at this point in my life, and I'm like 22 years old. Pretty strange, but we create this thing as a place because we believed that like good design and good art was something that would engage people in conversation. So we took over this old schoolhouse and started making pie with our friend Brianne, and who's now an incredible pastry chef. While we're living in Alabama working on this pie shop, our friend Zach comes to us and says, Los Angeles County Museum of Art wants to do an iPhone app. We had not done any apps, nor did we own iPhones, but we designed their first iPhone app while we're trying to bake pie. Then our first sort of like foray and like weird backdoor into fashion, our friends Lauren and Lania start this like fashion magazine. So we do like an identity system and a website and all of this stuff. And then we did an identity system for our friends who ran a steel fabrication and design studio called Face in Brooklyn, which still exists and is incredible. And they gave us shelter and a studio to work in while we built a project called Plus Pool, which is a project that's been going on for 12 years. It's a nonprofit initiative that Jeff and I are fortunate to be a part of with our friends Dongping Wang and Juana Stanescu and Kara Meyer. And now we're moving forward with the City of New York and the Economic Development Corporation to build a floating Olympic-sized self-filtering swimming pool, which will be a public park available to all in Manhattan. And then we embarked on more projects with Dong and Juana because we're like, oh, architecture, like, let's get back into that. We designed this sort of public street tent for a festival in New York, sponsored by New Museum and Storefront for Art and Architecture, and we were able to build it. So we're like, oh, that's great. Let's just keep moving. So then we did like a city block plan with Dong in Zagreb, the capital of Croatia. Did not win that competition. So we're like, okay, our luck's running out with those ones. Somehow in the middle of that, we get invited to teach in Saudi Arabia. This is in like Old Town Jeddah. Jeff and I in this mix is like super weird and unreal, but we went back twice and we built a graduate course called Play Lab Arabia and gave a TED talk there, and we were the only English speaker, and it was just, things were just like, well, what is going on? And it felt amazing and out of body. Somewhere along this journey, we meet a guy named Sean Yeaton, a kindred spirit, who is the bass player of a seminal punk band called Parquet Courts, and we win this crazy amount of money. At the time, it was crazy, to go to Stockholm, Sweden. The government funded us to live in an apartment for 2 weeks and just design an art exhibition that didn't actually come to fruition. Around that same time, Bruno Mars and Warner Music Group was like, hey, can you do a traveling merch vehicle for his tour? So we did that, but we really didn't know how to do that. And we took on the whole contract and had to fabricate it and all this stuff. It was crazy. And then at some point, I'm on a rooftop of my friend Mark and Dave's house at some party, and our friend Randy approaches us and says, hey, I got some land. Could you design a house for us? I see that you did these other things. We're like, yeah, absolutely. Didn't really know how to. We designed this house. I show the graphic because the graphic is fire, and the graphics are always more fire. Then we wanted to get into music videos. So we're like testing on our friends. This is our friend Alex. Then we did another music video for a punk band that broke up while we were shooting this video. Launched a sex toy company called Dame Products, which is like a rocket ship. Alex Fine, shout out, crushing it right now. did more videos for our friend Hugh. This is for a weed company called Baking Supply Company. Started doing more physical architecture. This is like the BMW Mini project space in Greenpoint. Then started working with artists. That was a primary goal, something we wanted to do. And we somehow got connected to Christopher Wool, this iconic painter, and gave us the opportunity to sort and archive all of his work and make a website that was sort of the digital archive and experience of his work and his studio's, exports. And then we're like, well, fuck it, like we should be making art too. And at some point we get invited to go to the National Museum of Romania in Bucharest, and we do some weird 3-day performance piece with our friend Joel Evie, which involved like MIDI equipment and Xerox machines. And I don't even actually know how to explain it to this day. But then our friend Gabriel Riciopo was creative director of this brand called Need Supply at the time. And he's like, oh, you want to work in fashion? Like you should come on and help me with some of the things we're doing here. So we got to do our first campaigns and launch brands and give real creative strategy to things and ideas. And we were heard and listened to, and it was empowering. And then another brand called Theory brought us in to help do some sort of retail experiences. And each one of these things becomes a tangent, but it gives us this sort of like feeling that anything is possible because we didn't know we could do it prior. And it's not about it being the best thing in the world. It's about like us being able to do it. And then just more sort of like blending art and experience. First Dibs Auction House invites us to do an art performance in their gallery. And we asked if we could collect all the lamps off their site and make one button that turned them all on at the same time. And they let us do that. Started building sculptures. This is for a vaporizer company. This was like one of the first public art projects we did with Jonathan O'Brien. We scoured Craigslist and got all the things we could for free off of it and built a living room in the center of a street and made little hang tags for everything, explaining where it came from. Most of it all made up. And then all of this stuff was gone at the end of the day, which was pretty amazing. Then we started to get a little bit more conceptual with it. And we had this observation that Walking Phoenix, his first name sounds like the word walking. So we went and took screen grabs of every instance of him walking in every single one of his live action films, and then invited him to walk by the gallery when we exhibit it. And he has not walked in any of the invitations we've given him. Then we got invited by like a bigger gallery to come and show next to like Ellsworth Kelly and Richard Prince. And we got commissioned to do a piece we called Stationary Paperboy. And every piece was built around the times. It was right after Trump was elected. And so we got a recumbent bicycle, and anytime somebody walked into the gallery, there was somebody there stationed to throw that day's newspaper, the news at their face, which they also let us do. But security was not happy in the beginning. And towards the end, they thought it was like one of the most fun things they had ever witnessed. And then the goal was to make public sculptures. And a group led by Sarah Berman called Sixth Avenue of the Americas Association invited us to do large public sculptures. And they said, do whatever you want. And we decided we would do flowers because you don't see many of those in Midtown Manhattan. We did 6 30-foot inflatable flowers, which has led to 6 other commissions and exhibitions, including 2, which one will be in America this year and one in China this year. And then we got invited back. So then we built these sort of like Hollywood backdrop sets all along 6th Avenue. So you could place yourself within the Americas on the Avenue of the Americas. More art. This is for toilet paper company, Plant Paper and Marta Gallery. And we did a toilet paper dispenser called Rock Paper Scissors, which is made of a rock, paper and scissors. And then the amazing Fisk Gallery, which my friend Bijan, who runs Fisk Projects, designed these Parsons flyers. They keep giving us the opportunity to do things with them, and they're like legendary. And so we did a piece called Art History Bouquet, led by Dylan Kogel in our office, and it's just taking 20 flowers from 20 different diverse artists and making one bouquet out of them, and then signing it with all their signatures. And we started getting into furniture, and we made this piece that we called Teamwork, which is a chair that can only be used if 2 people are using it at the same time in balance. This is Reese Cooper and Jacob Hetzer here. Then we started working with some like footwear companies, and we're like, oh, we could make footwear, like that would be sick. So we started doing these experiments, also led by Dylan, in our office, which evolved into us getting a project from a startup, these amazing guys, Adam and Jared, who wanted to start a boot company, and we branded it and art directed it and launched it, the website, you name it. And so then we had sort of some sort of like real connection with footwear. Then started getting invited to do like larger campaigns. Shout out Anthony Coleman, who's continued to give us opportunities within the Nike ecosystem. And we built this like entire world around the launch of Stranger Things season 3, which is like never on our checklist. It was just sort of like, it came to us, and it was just one of the most fun things we could have ever imagined doing. And then more campaigns. We got to do this ridiculous campaign for Kate Moss in Paris for this Parisian brand, Zadig and Voltaire. And we convinced them to let us go to Paris, Texas, as if we went to the wrong place. And we shot the campaign in Paris, Texas, instead of Paris, France. A friend at Zadig introduced us to Reese Cooper when we were moving to Los Angeles, who was just kind of starting and growing his namesake brand. And we showed up in Paris, January 2020, and did his first runway show without permission, basically, and took over Palais de Tokyo and built a forest in the middle of it, which grew to this sort of like series of triumphant films that were actually on the calendar of Paris Fashion Week, which we didn't even know was a thing really at the time. And started working on these films with amazing director Andre Beto. And this is shot in the woods in California. This is shot the Mount Wilson Observatory in California, which led to this sort of like incredible relationship with the United States National Forest Service with Reese Cooper. We got to shut down a bridge because of that relationship, and we showed SS-22 on this bridge just like 45 minutes from my house here. And then met on Instagram Ruben Selby and Maisie Williams, and they invited us to work with them and grow Ruben's brand. And we got to show during London Fashion Week last June and built this complete collapsible cardboard structure, which is like a model of a Travelodge hotel, which is like one of the first buildings Ruben ever remembers seeing when he went to London for the first time. We recreated it for him at scale in this building. Started shooting more campaigns. This is with our friend Luca Venter for Les Benjamin. Then started getting into Pharrell territory and started shooting a few different Pharrell campaigns with our friend Andrew Kenny. And shot this relatively recently with Shaniqua Jarvis, incredible photographer for Pharrell. Then like switching in tangential back into sort of like a digital realm, but still architecture, invited by Nike ACG to build like a digital virtual world where you could experience this ACG collection, but also design public sort of like landmarks or architectural pieces, which we had never done before and now want to do more of. Transitioning back into sort of more physical stuff. This is an exhibition for the late painter Ernie Barnes, iconic painter, and we took elements from his famous painting, The Sugar Shack, and built a world around that at the UTA Artist Space here in Hollywood. Sometime there, invited by Drake's team to work on the sort of architectural retail for the launch of Scorpion in 2018, which traveled and has evolved into several different projects, including the website for Drake called Drake Related, where it's this sort of virtual world we're building out slowly, and the launch of, shout out Nocta, his Nike brand, working on art direction and graphic design and user experience, and his candle company called Better World Fragrance House. And then at some point in there, we met the incredible Virgil Abloh, 2013, thanks to our friends Dong and Wana. And he had known about another tangent we had done, which is this magazine called Clog, which is somewhere in here. And we were making this sort of black and white print publication funded by ourselves. And he came by the studio one day because he wanted to see what that was about. We designed a book for him in 2014 and it never got made. And then we get a call and he's like, hey, I got a museum exhibition and would love for you to be a part of designing this monograph. And we had the opportunity to kind of dive deep with V in his life and really get to know him and understand him. And we built this amazing book. And then that tangent, we're like literally having a meeting in Paris about the book. And he was like, we should make another book, which is like a flip book of the first video for the first brand. He started Pyrex Vision, and that thing happened like lightning quick. And we did it in this sort of toy packaging. And then one day we're like leaving Paris and we're going back home, and we just felt like so lucky and thankful. And then we get a DM and he's like, hey, you want to design the Louis Vuitton shows? And we didn't even know that was a tangent like that we could go on. And like cut to the future, you know, prior to his passing in November, you know, we were thankfully able to be a part of 9 different presentations and runway shows with him, which, you know, was a complete honor and privilege, but it also challenged us, and it gave us this sort of belief that dreams are possible, and the things that we believe and the way we want to move through the world, whatever, that there's people out there that think that way. And Virgil was the king of people that think that way. This is the first. The second, a third was a film and a maquette. Then we took this parade to Shanghai, China, and then we took it to Tokyo. Then we shot a film with Mahfouz Sultan in Paris, and then took one of the collections and built this crazy structure in Korea. Made another film with Mahfouz and Virgil, showed in Miami, and then just recently, a couple of weeks ago, Virgil's last collection for Louis Vuitton in Paris. And, you know, I could give like a whole day on just Virgil, but it is important to sort of, I think, end that series of tangents over 15 years with this work, because there's no better example of sort of like a like-minded person than Virgil Abloh. And that's sort of why this studio exists, is to sort of find people like that, spend time with people like that, and build worlds with people like that. Notwithstanding Brendan on this call point, you know, in the full circle, I thankfully did not cry up to this point. I'm pretty proud of myself, but I may after this. In the book that we designed with Virgil, he wrote a note, and the note didn't happen in the beginning of the book. The note happened at the end of the book. And he wrote a little note, and he said, to the global community of creators that I call friends, this book is more of a testament to us than a representation of my personal work. Upon creating this dense body of work, I've realized one thing at the end: it's all worth nothing compared to the freedom to express the next idea. And I realized after talking to Brendan that this is like Virgil embodied tangents. He absolutely embodied them and embraced them and allowed them to sort of run free. And that was powerful. And we very much look at our studio, Jeff and I, and the team like that, in my life personally, because we think that it is absolutely worth it. I'm leaving Paris a couple weeks ago. Jeff, you know, was stuck there for a few extra days, and I was boarding the plane, and I sent him a text and was like, yo, I just, like, in my feelings, this has been a long road, but I feel like it's the beginning, basically. And I'm just so excited about what's next. And he shot me back this text, and he said, so blessed to do this with you. It's a dream come true in every sense of the phrase. I'm thankful for who you are and for who you push me and many others to be the best versions of ourselves. So many more mountains to climb and friends to make along the way. I love you so much. The cool thing about this text is that it's real, and it's real 20 years after meeting Jeff. And we still have this thing, which is completely rooted in something which is spiritual and positive and creative and honest and trusting and all of those things. But it's rooted in the belief that the tangents are okay. And it feels good to know that. And just kind of circling back on this ridiculous photo of myself 20 years ago, you know, I remember, like, my dad kind of instilled in me this, like, incredible lesson. He said, just don't go through the motions. Go do whatever you want. But if you're going to do it, you know, don't go through the motions. And I think at the time when I was young, I was, like, so scared of not being able to get to all these things, not because I wanted to be known for them or whatever. It's like, I really just want to do these things, you know, earnestly. And I was scared maybe I couldn't be good at it, or that, something was getting in the way of that. But I'm here kind of full circle, and this is just kind of like proof, but like I'm back in this space making music again very aggressively with friends and taking it very seriously. And a project's coming out this year, and it makes me feel great that the tangents are worthwhile, but they're worthwhile even if they don't go anywhere, but especially worthwhile when they come back around full circle and you make connections back to them. And that's sort of what I'm looking for, and I think what the studio is looking for as well. So that's it. That's PlayLab Incorporated, as brief as I possibly. That's 30 minutes. That's pretty perfect.
Archie, wow, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
That was a real whirlwind.
Yeah, it is. It is a whirlwind.
I guess I would open it up if anyone has questions. I mean, I guess I have a few that I could ask too, but I'm curious if anyone wants to jump in. I'm happy to moderate. Like I said, you guys can speak up, or if you want to ask something in the chat, I can reiterate that to Archie.
Can I just ask something?
Of course, yeah. Hey, Devin.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I love that it's open to the public. This has been really great. So I guess obviously like PlayLab has such a multidisciplinary background. I guess kind of a two-parter. Like one, it seems like you have an knack for saying yes to things and then figuring out and doing a great job at executing. Has there been a time when it didn't work? And the follow-up for that would be just like, when do you know when to call in the experts or have other people come in who are craftspeople or designers and really like execute on your vision?
Yeah, I mean, the studio, it was 5 people for a very long time. Now it's 9, and it's definitely a new ecosystem. And we have an incredible team, and in my humble opinion, they're the best fucking team in the world. And Jeff and I are very lucky. But at the same time, we don't think we're good at everything. That's not the point. Like, we just want to be a part of things. So to your point, we rely on like experts like all the time. Like, and I think like, it's not about like taking the ball and hugging it and like running upfield. It's more about like sometimes getting the ball and then making sure somebody else has the ball, or all hands on the ball, or whatever sports analogy. And we look at the studio that way. It's like, if we get a job and we're able to do some incredible photo shoot, then it's like, all right, who are some amazing people we want to work with to shoot it, but also produce it, style it, and light it. And all of these things are key. And that's just for that, like Louis Vuitton shows, like, graphic design, studio temp, Marco Fasolini in Milan. Like, he's like one of the greatest of all time. And he's like, we would trust him with anything. And, that's how the business started, or the studio started. It was like graphic design. You want to do it all. You grow and you're like, I don't want to do it all. I want to be a part of it all. And I want to make sure everybody, and we met him thankfully through Virgil, and same with, those that shoot the films. The films are the takeaway. The films are the primary evidence that this show happened in the way that we want people to see it. And that's done by Be Good Studios, which is in Los Angeles with us, Lena and Nick, and a whole other bunch of people. Yeah, it's like, that's why I name people so much, because it's definitely not about me or Jeff. It's about an incredible amount of people, right? That are like, and you find the ones that are positive and hardworking and can tell you the truth and mean what they say and do good on it. But to that point, there has been failures, because I'm very guilty of saying yes, like a lot. And so sometimes I have to back out of something, or, sometimes we don't get it right. I think it's rare now. But as you try new things and you grow what you're capable of and take on new techniques or partners or whatever, things are going to come up. And the trick is sort of how you go about it, and making sure that your team is protected and your time is protected, and that your collaborators are protected, your clients are protected, and all that kind of stuff, which is a whole other art form, which, we're not even close to being at the end of. So I'm sure there will be a lot. Check in 10 years. It'll look like really.
Thank you.
Maybe a bit of a follow on to that. My colleague Lynn was asking, how did you establish yourself in, making kind of like basically like, art, like self-initiated art in some sense, versus, client service work, design client projects.
I mean, it was a slow burn. It was like the goal from the very beginning was, we talked a lot about the Charles and Ray Eames office and how they were able to kind of work across so many disciplines. And yeah, when you're 19 and, eventually when we moved to New York and started PlayLab really at 21, we had no idea how we were going to do it. We placed a bet on, if we were able to build relationships, the work was going to come through relationships. The opportunities were going to come through relationships. But as you talk to people, it's important not just to share what you've done, but what you want to do. And so sometimes that comes in the form of just, conversations or whatever. And then sometimes it comes in the form of initiating projects. So that's why PyLab and Clog and PlusPool were born so quickly out of the gate. One, we were just sort of like hungry, but two, there was no way we were going to be able to illustrate to people that we could, build a public park or start and run a magazine or a record label or a pie shop, that there's like a through line to these things. They're all art and design and whatever. And there's branding and graphic design and websites and all those things and architecture. But the important thing is, I think for us, is to look at the studio and be like, I don't know, there's some good ideas there and I bet they could do it, at the end of the day. So it's sort of like, that's the ultimate branding tool, is just working hard and getting ideas out and a disparate amount of them. And so when we think about the projects we're taking on as a studio, it's okay, is the team interested in doing that? Because they're going to be working on it. Is it going to continue to kind of educate us on what we're able to do so that we can know how to do it better, or swerve and do something else? I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I do have a question.
Oh yeah, Emmanuel, go ahead.
Hear me? How you doing? What up, Archie?
What's up?
What's good, guy? Well, I guess my question is, just through everything you've done over the last couple of decades, you and Jeff, is there something in particular that, because I mean, you're an architect, you're a designer, you do all these things. Is there anything along that journey that you felt like you were more kind of attached to, I guess, in a way, whether it's just like the music world or, doing what you were doing with Virgil and fashion and stuff like that? Is there anything that kind of just like, stuck with you? I know you're a big music guy and that's a big passion of yours, but I wonder, just throughout that journey, which one kind of calls you? And I guess going into the future might be a silly question because the lab is such a diverse kind of, just thing. Do you think you'd settle into a certain kind of thing that you guys all want to do, or will it always be just whatever comes to you? That's a lot of questions. But
everybody should know that Manny here is one of the most talented people on planet Earth, talented musicians I've ever met in my life. And that is an incredible Aquagy, by the way. Get on Spotify and listen to it ASAP after this. It's a great question, and I guarantee the answer is going to be what you think it is, which is that all the things are the things. And that's my problem. What I just very honestly and truthfully, like what I have learned about myself in relation to the studio, is that the studio is my thing. That's the thing that I care about the most. And I'm just like an individual project. I'm not going to get it right every time, but I care about the people and I care about growing the opportunity and experience for those people. And I care that those people are enjoying and fulfilling something themselves in the projects that we're all doing together, because that's the only real thing. It's like, like the crowning, like sort of like privilege of my life was being able to work alongside Jeff and Anna and everybody on our team with Virgil. And I will grieve that to the end of my life. But I also feel that way about the other collaborators and clients that we work with. But it all connects at the studio, at the team, and the makeup of those people and what they think and where their references are coming from and where their energy lies and what they need to be successful, and like trying to figure out new ways to get that. And that's super hard work, like to figure out. And because you don't go to sleep not thinking about it ever, so there's just sort of like no end to that. And that gives me comfort because, it's like there is a feeling of like you complete a project, well, you're just on to the next project. There is like the team is teaching me to remind ourselves to celebrate, because I just like moving and I like working and I like the whole thing, emails and calls and conversations and brainstorms and like making documents and whatever. Like I love all of it, so yeah, of course there's days and there's things that happen and I get pissed off and anxious like anybody else, but it's really like it's the studio, which is the thing. I love music, but it's like I would get bored of just doing stuff for artists or stage designs or whatever. It's like you want to do them when the moment's right with the people that are right at the right time. And so it's about the ecosystem or the machine that allows that to happen. And there's no answer or model for it. That's the scary thing. It's just sort of like an amoebic, ever evolving thing. Yeah, so there's never like an answer. It was like a monologue. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a perfect answer. That's
Hey,
exactly
Dylan. Dylan's having lunch in the studio, everybody.
One question that was kind of plus one by a few people came from Zach, just about financing your projects, and I'd imagine it's totally case by case. But do you like have large companies that are giving you budgets, investors, friends and family, etc.?
It's all crypto. No, just it's Dylan. It's just case by case. The obvious ones are client projects or commissions like Nike, Adidas, Louis Vuitton, etc. The early days initiatives, yeah, they're self-funded. Clog was self-funded, and then each issue paid for the next issue, basically. And Sound Friends, the record label, was supposed to be that, but it really was just my bank account because I didn't know how to sell product at the time. So I was really just like spending money on records because like, oh, it has to look this way. But then I got it. I'm like, what do I do with it now? But I was young. It's 22, so different now. So yeah. And then others just sort of like, still to this day, there's people, organizations, et cetera, that you work with because you need to, because you want to, and the dollar doesn't matter. And so you try to figure out the balance of making sure that the thing's moving, but you're able to kind of work on other things that are important, either spiritually for you or creatively for you. And so we try to treat them all equally in some sense, but the more we do it, the longer we do it, we find that there are more people that trust us with their budgets to execute something. And Jeff has been always the best at this because the ideas are the easy part. It's like you spend 1 hour, you spend 30 minutes in Play Lab with any of these guys, any of these people, you'll have too many ideas. And so it's like it's like a faucet that doesn't turn off. The hard thing is executing well, so the concept is clear and done right and engaging and captivates people, and that's where the true art of the studio exists. And that's the 8 other people that work there with me that do that. But
that maybe leads into I'm going to try to combine a couple of questions. There's a bunch in the chat, so sorry folks, but one question was around, do you think there's a point where you have too many interests, and does it make sense to continue to push for all of them? And I would combine that with this question around craft, of like perfecting a craft. When you have so many different kind of, you come from this very multidisciplinary background, so when do you hone in? And I will say, I mean, I just knowing your work also, it's like, I think one of the things that's, is kind of been striking to me is like the fact that like I think a lot of the work is executed at a 10. It's executed up here, and so you're not just doing a bunch of things sort of like half-assed. I think, as you mentioned, you're kind of like you're going all in on each one. And yeah, so I guess the question is a little bit of like, just how do you know when and where to edit in a way, because you must be doing some of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, as the studio grows, there's two primary things, which is, do we have time to do it? But the precursor to that is, do people want to do it? And what goes into whether or not you want to do it is as much a group decision as it is like an individual sort of like identity thing, right? Where it's like some architectural projects have longer times, like schedules, timelines. They're going to zap so much time from so many people in the studio that by the time they surface out of it, they've only been in that headspace for sometimes up to a year. And so it shouldn't be necessarily like my decision or Jeff's decision or whatever. It should be a group decision of like, is that something that we want to do? Because when we come out of this, we'll be known as that. Because everything you do, you get known as that. And that's a selfish decision, and that should be okay, because there are a lot of studios, and there should be a lot of studios, because there's a lot of different ways to kind of like do it. And so I think that's like my very high level answer is it's a constant, like we have a meeting every morning at 9:30 called the Daily, and it's an opportunity to kind of go through every single current project on the list, no matter who's working on it, any project which is about to come up, like on deck, maybe a contract's about to be signed or timeline's about to start, and then business development, things that are like in the pressure cooker, but we don't really know where they're going to shake out. At this point in the studio, like that list is extremely long. And you ask yourself, like, do you really want it to be much longer? Can you? Like, what's the point? Like, other than making sure everybody else is, on the team is continuing to like be able to excel and have the room to do it. So we do check-ins with the team and make sure they're okay, what they need to grow, and they're honest with us, and we always need to check in more. But that's like that. What was the second one?
I think, just the question around like perfecting your craft, that idea that,
oh yeah, I mean, well, because
you have a lot of things that could be described as a practice, right? Like, I know you have an active painting practice even, right? And it's like, how do you find, I guess, the time for that when you have your hands in so many pots?
Yeah, like a supportive family, and shout out Emily, and then a lot of just not sleeping. But the perfecting is sort of like just the only thing and I'll never reach it. The only thing I think I'm concerned with is perfecting the studio, or the studio getting sharper and better. And better means so many things, and we're not even close to being there yet. So that's the thing that I have my mind on. So the other things that flow down from that is like, I'm really very proud of what, like the Louis Vuitton runway shows, for instance, that's led by Anna and Jeff in our office. They are absolute masters at that. Whole team, a part of that, of course. It's something that they've been able to build, having no prior ability to do it, truly. Like Anna had more experience than anyone in the office, but not at this level. 9 deep. And that's just Louis. It's not Reese or Ruben Selby or the ones I can't name yet or whatever. It's like their resume is different now. And that's the joke with Dylan. Dylan came on as an intern. We realized like month 1 that he shouldn't be an intern. He should just be with us forever. And we'll try to make that happen. But the joke is that his resume is like infinite. And like every week it just continues to build. And that's a good diagram of what success should or could look like at the studio for some people if they want it. Is like Dylan, for instance, he, strategy, zines, shoes, artworks, physical architecture, retail concepts, major campaigns, art directing a photo shoot, managing this, you name it. And that's just tip of the iceberg of what he's able to do with this studio, that whatever he does with his life, you know, he knows that it's possible, or like whatever's next is possible. And so I think it's like, it's less about, I used to think maybe in the beginning of PlayLab, it was about just, being the best graphic designer, whatever. It's like, that just seems like not fun to me anymore. What seems really fun to me is that the team is just trying to get better as a team and better as people, which is so hard to do, and feels like a worthwhile pursuit. And like being so close to Virgil for so long was so beautiful, because you see, like, he was so liberal with his ideas and access and all of these things in a way that makes you feel like, the point, you know, is doing. You don't know the reverberating effects that some action will have or something will have. Yeah. And so if you get your mind right and your health right and your time right and all those things, then a lot of the other things just sort of happen a lot easier, and they become more valuable or interesting or whatever. And just for me, you know, it's like, I'm making this music. It sounds like a 17-year-old made it right now. And I'm okay with that. And I'm not trying to, like, you know, I mean, like when I was 17, it was like, I want to get in a Sprinter van and eat like McDonald's and like go across the country and play in clubs. That's not my vision anymore. My vision is to make the music and just be like, tell my son that I made it. Like, so when he's older, he'd be like, that's crazy, Dad, that you made that, you know, and like laugh at me or whatever, you know. That seems cooler to me now. And maybe next year it'll be different, but that's sort of where my brain's at with all that stuff. But I think there's 8 other people in the studio that may have like a different opinion about it. Sure. One of 8.
Someone had asked, what's the weirdest thing that a client has asked you to do?
Ooh, what's the answer, Dylan? He won't say. Weirdest thing. Definitely like early days. I think 2009, we were building like a music website. Like it was like in between the time where MySpace was dying and Pure Volume was dying and like Spotify wasn't alive yet and all this stuff. And we were working on this thing, and that client asked us to do a porn site. We like quickly said no. That was surprising. Like, we're like, what? Yeah. Why would you come to us for this thing? I think going to Saudi Arabia was probably one of the strangest things we ever did, which was Jeff and I did a workshop under John Bielenberg's Project M in Frankfurt, Germany, and met an amazing guy named Eric Martin, who actually lives here in LA now. And he was going to school in Saudi Arabia, and he was like, man, like the way you approach ideas is weird. You should come teach at this school. And like 4 weeks later, we were in Saudi Arabia. And then that week, like it was such a powerful week. It was so insane. And then they asked us to give this TED talk and then all this stuff. And then they asked us to come back and design a whole course called PlayLab Arabia. And then we came back like 3 weeks later again. And that was just totally surreal. That may be the strangest one that I can talk about.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see what's in the chat here. Oh, one last one here, and we are coming up on time. So, curious. James Langford is curious about the status of Plus Pool in 2022. Yeah,
James. Pretty exciting stuff. We were, the whole thing with Plus Pool is that we designed a beautiful project that didn't have a site or a home or a budget to build it. So it took a little while, or the engineering to figure out how to filter the water, which that was solved, thankfully. But the city of New York, after 12 years and a lot of work from our board of directors and our our managing director, Kara Meyer, we have a home, like a site where we can build it. And so now we're going through the phases to do that, which is intense. And so, yeah, full-time staff in New York, dedicated to running that nonprofit. Just hired an amazing woman named Nora, who's come from an incredible nonprofit aquatics background. And we have 2 new board members. Thing is just an incredible place. It's exciting. So yeah, you'll be seeing some stuff pop up later this year.
Fantastic. I'm excited.
Well,
Yeah.
long wait for that one, but
no, and I think that's kind of like I guess like the question that I've maybe posed to you in the past. I think maybe when you came to my class, even I think, and I'm forgetting the answer now, but just really around the maintaining of a kind of, I don't know, tenacity or a gumption around like keeping these things going. I think as a lot of projects I work on are about a long project would be 6 months or something, and when I look at something like Plus Pool, it's incredible to see that, that 12 plus year trajectory. And, I guess like any strategies for us, maybe who have less energy in terms of just how to maintain.
I think it's like a balance of not being hard on yourself, not taking it too seriously. Virgil always talked about how, dreams, what was the quote? It's like, dreams don't happen when you're sleeping. Dreams are made when you're awake. So he was always about like taking advantage of the hours that maybe other people are sleeping to like an aggressive degree. And he got a lot of things done. I think that's part of it, but I think it's just like figuring out how to enjoy it. And then I think, like, not to beat a dead horse here, but I think surrounding yourself with good people is the key to that, because none of the things that I showed in this presentation are due to me. It's due to others. So, and it's more enjoyable with others. It's like why I have a family. I don't want to go through life alone. I want to go through life sharing things with people, and as regular as 3 meals a day, or, a good movie or whatever. It's like, it's about the people that you're with and all that. So I think, yeah, like I'm very lucky to have met Jeff. So, and I think that, when you're looking at things in the right way, you'll find people like that, like like-minded people that, and the trust is the biggest thing. It's like the worst projects that we've ever been a part of are because of not having trust from someone else, fear and anger and negativity and all those things. And we just try to steer away from it as much as possible. And so you look for trust. Trust is the key.
All right, I think that's a good moment to end on. And yeah, thank you again, Archie, for spending this time with us. It'd be really fantastic to see again that breadth of work, and yeah, I appreciate you coming in. I'm gonna say thank you for all of our visitors as well. Thanks for showing up, guys. It's great to see everybody. And yeah, we're gonna have the second in our series with Keller Easterling in 2 weeks. So I hope you guys can join for that as well. Same time, 3 o'clock Eastern. Yeah, appreciate you coming here again, Archie. It's great to see you. And yeah, and these Zoom calls always end so abruptly. So my apologies, and
it's life. It's 2022.
In the before times, I think we'd be, I think we had a whiskey or something in my office before, but
yeah, a few.
Yeah. All right. Geography challenges us with that, but yeah, I hope we can catch up again soon for sure. And thanks again for coming to Parsons. It's great to see you.
Later.
Yeah.
Thanks so